Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined as always by the number one producer in late night. It's Sherry Voluntary. Sherry, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks.
Or by your shirt, I would say waka 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 waka
Right.
waka. Yes. I for just a brief moment right then, I thought to myself, I should just do the waka waka thing for as long as I can until I run out of breath. But then I remembered I actually have huge lungs, and we have a monologue to get around to.
Right.
So no, we're gonna. I feel like that's one of the. You ever see? I'm going on a tangent already. We literally not even a minute. You ever see these videos on YouTube where someone will take some? I guess you can kind of call it ASMR, but they'll take some sound, like it's the background noise of the Enterprise in Star Trek, or it's. But it can be anything. It can just be a funny line in a movie, and it's on repeat for like 16 hours, and that's the YouTube video.
Right.
And that video has millions of views.
I know.
Like,
it's disgusting.
Like way more than us.
I know.
That just in this moment, I thought to myself, this is it. This is our ticket.
Right.
We need to do a video of us going waka 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 waka,
Right.
and then blow that up to 16 hours, upload it to YouTube.
Right.
What do you think?
And I agree. And at the end, you just have the just once at the very end.
Yeah. It has to have the death sound at the end.
That's a great.
Because that's what gets people into it, is you look into the comments. Because of course, if you ever see these videos on YouTube, you look in the comments,
Right.
and there's thousands and thousands of people just having debates with one another and
Can't
talking
wait
about.
to talk about it.
Yeah. So there will inevitably be that guy who is time-stamped 15 hours, 59 minutes, 54 seconds and said, "I'll see you guys here."
Right.
You know.
Ha, I love the end.
Speaking of not loving the end, so I saw on social media this past week, actually, a bunch of people were up in arms because there was this Congress lady named Cori Bush who she was giving this testimony in front of Congress. And you know what? It doesn't even matter what she's a Congress lady. And that means whatever she says doesn't matter.
Right.
But she was giving this testimony in Congress, and she was talking specifically about people who give birth. Now, you and I might think of people who give birth as mothers.
Right. Women.
Yeah. Women. Well, we just had Mother's Day, and so
Right.
that's fresh on everyone's mind. But it's not Mother's Day anymore. It's Birthing Person's Day.
Ugh.
So take a look at this right here. This was her statement. She says, "Every day, Black birthing people and our babies die because our doctors don't believe our pain. My children almost became a statistic. I almost became a statistic." I think probably heard.
Right. Yeah.
"I testified about my experience. Hear us, believe us, because for so long, nobody has."
God, I hate these people.
Because in 2021, this is what happens. If you're Black and you live in the United States of America in current year, if you go to the doctor, they'll say no.
Right. Not you.
Get out of here, Negro. We don't
believe
serve your
pain.
kind here. Didn't you read the sign on the door? And they'll just ignore your pain and you'll die.
Right.
That's what...
I just find it so funny that, they talk about being everybody, like the media unpersons people all the time. The politicians unperson people, the wokeists. But she literally unpersoned women and mothers as, and just Black people. She made it just all one cohesive Black people unit, which I thought that was what that stuff was supposed to be against, like feminism and wokeism. I don't know. I don't get these people. I really don't.
Well, like we could do a whole show on just this topic of
Yeah.
Because what they would call it, because there's the two I words, there's individualism, but then there's also inclusivity.
Right.
And individualism and inclusivity don't always meet eye to eye.
Right.
I think that's probably a pretty fair way to say it.
Yeah.
Well, but then what's more, it's not just a friendly cultural debate. It's weaponized.
Exactly.
That's the worst part about it. Yeah.
Right.
But I just for a fact this is one of those things where you can't let what you see and hear from a congressperson, a congress critter, or what you see people debating on Twitter. That's not real life.
No.
Like you and I are not going to go down to Walmart and hear people in the aisles just they've got their teacups and they're sitting here having a friendly debate of what do you think of birthing people.
Right.
No one's doing that.
I too am a birthing person. Not only women can give birth.
But indeed, no, it is in fact only women that can give birth. But
Correct.
that's the beautiful. I remember having a conversation with a friend of ours. I don't want to name his name because I don't want him to be implicated in our being deplatformed
Right.
over all this. His name is Dave B. People will probably know that, so we'll call him D Benner.
Right.
And he and I had a conversation about a similar subject to this, and what he was mostly laughing about is that what this thing is, it's not what's funny. What's funny is that this is a controversial statement
Exactly.
in current year, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Speaking of controversial statements, go ahead and pull up the latest from Andrew Cuomo. Audio emerges New York Governor Andrew Cuomo saying he'd like to dip his garlic knot in his female staffers' marinara sauces.
He's got spicy meatballs.
Now, I want to say, before anyone goes, wait a minute, that's fake news, that actually is fake news. That's from a parody account of BBC News. Now, don't get me wrong, Andrew Cuomo's probably a rapist.
Right.
I mean, I'm not a journalist.
99%.
So I'm not a journalist, right? So I don't feel like you can't hold me to some type of journalistic integrity.
Correct.
So I might surmise, I bet that Andrew Cuomo's quite the rapist. Sherry, did you hear that he refers to his private parts as a garlic knot? I tell you what, by the way, far be it for me to show a lot of concern for Andrew Cuomo, like the concern he showed all the old people in the folks homes. But for the guys out there, and perhaps maybe the older gentlemen out there, I wish Mike Maharrey were here because he could communicate to his kind more effectively. If it looks like a knot, you should seek medical attention. You can't be putting these types of things off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like at the end of those commercials that, they give the long spiel about what you should do if you have priapism or something else. That's what you need at the end of that statement.
Well, what's great, because there's two different types of medical commercials you see on TV. There's the one that kind of badgers people of, check your blood sugar, check it often. If you can't pee and poop right and you're pissing blood and you're 65 years old, you better go to the hospital, those types of things. But then there's the other types of commercials that are, well, here's a potential solution, but by the way, if you take this, you'll also get AIDS.
Right.
Exactly. Now look, this pill will make it so that your teeth are whiter. You'll also have some brain hemorrhaging. Like that's just a thing that happens. I mean, you're gonna have look, this is life, right? You can't just expect to just waltz your way through life without a little aneurysm
all gonna die of something.
I tell you what. That leads me to the final thing I want to talk about today. Talk about not being able to waltz through life without any medical problems.
Yeah.
So, boy, we're broke again here at the Alan Mosley TV studios. Again, being underlined several times because I mean, broke is what's the phrase
broke.
of being poor is the natural, being prosperous is what the evolution is.
Yeah.
So we are in our normal state of being broke here at It's Too Late. And I'll tell you why. I ended up having to spend most of my savings on my fiance's pet cat, Sebastian. Now go ahead and take a look at Sebastian right here. So this is Sebastian looking after his mama while mama's trying to take a nap. That's Sebastian right there, a little white fur ball. I mean, I use the term little loosely here.
Right. He's huge.
Sebastian used to be little. So here, take a look at what Sebastian used to look like.
Oh.
Now, I mean, you can see why Mama fell in love with Sebastian.
Yeah.
Right there. Of course, Sebastian grew up a little bit. So here's a picture of older Sebastian. One can barely imagine how he makes it through the day.
Times are hard.
Yes, just life is hard for Sebastian. But actually, life was hard for Sebastian the last few weeks. So earlier this year, he had a little bit of a medical problem, and he went to the vet. And at that time, everything worked out okay. But the vet told us that well, he was showing signs of being pre-diabetic, which is pretty common for felines and especially older cats. Sebastian's over north of 11, going on 12 years old now, and so and I hate to throw the vet like totally under the bus. Actually, I don't even know why I said that. I love to throw people under the bus. So the vet told us that he was not diabetic. He did not need a prescription for insulin or anything, but he would need a checkup. Well, we tried to take him to his checkup, but something you might not know about Sebastian is he's a little cranky.
Just a tad.
He's not really socialized around people other than me or Anna Kay.
Yeah.
And they knew that he has to be sedated to be evaluated. That's just how it is. Well, they tried to arrange for him to have a couple of exams, but then they failed to arrange that at a time when the person who does the sedating could be there. So they kept pushing back the appointment. Finally, he went to an appointment last Monday, and he was not doing very well. And they told Anna Kay then he's got to go to the hospital. And it turns out he actually was diabetic. So he was in that, what's that, diabetic ketoacidosis or whatever. Yeah. So that's not where you want to be.
No.
And
not the keto diet you need.
No, and he was severely dehydrated. He lost a lot of weight. So that's that old Sebastian picture you saw. He was 20 pounds. He's a chunky boy.
He is.
He was all the way down to 11 pounds. By the time he went to the hospital. And it was touch and go there for a couple of days, and weren't sure he was going to make it. But happy news, after another couple of days in the hospital, he was back to assaulting the nurses and demanding his lunch. And so that's how you know he's okay. So Sebastian's back home, and I know a lot of people would say, well, if my cat was pushing 12 years old, I'm not sure I could go blow basically every amount of my savings on rescuing this senior cat with this health concern. But I don't regret doing it, and here's why right here. So that's why I'm broke. That's why we're broke again. But I think we made the right choice.
# worth it.
So you can go to patreon.com/Alan Mosley or go to my PayPal. It's in the show notes. And because I would also like to eat.
Hey, but you need to lose weight too, Alan.
So I'll just nearly die. I'll lose half of my body weight.
Yes.
And then someone will rush, and then it'll be the next person's turn to fundraise for my hospital. Guys, we have a great show for you. We'll be right back with the meme of the week and the viewer mail right after this. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Guys, welcome back to the show. Hey, Sherry.
Yes.
What time is it?
Meme of the week.
Women are 3D printers of people. So see, that's great because that really just disarms the whole controversy. Instead of, we won't call them mothers and we won't call them birthing persons. We'll just call them 3D printers of people.
I mean, objects, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
where's
the lie?
Well, I've always told Anna Kay that the Bible says that you're a subsidiary. Am I wrong or am I right? The great theologian Alan Mosley, as you all know. Yeah.
Atheist Jesus, yes.
But that's really good though. So what are some? Because we live in a brave new world where language is distorted and words can mean lots of different things. And so I think the only way we can bring everyone together so that they don't just fight forever over who owns what word is we'll just come up with new terms for everybody. That way, everyone gets a new one. So
Right.
so mothers are 3D printers of people.
Right.
So let's go ahead and do the whole family. So fathers are sperming people.
I have one.
Okay.
Grandfathers in my family are bothering people.
We made it a whole like 20 minutes into the show before we had a uncouth reference to
Bothering
sexual
children.
predation. Yes.
But that makes children bothered people.
If you're from Alabama, then cousins are, well, I guess cousins are also birthing people. They're marrying people.
Marrying people, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
You got any other ones?
No, that's it.
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
Well, I'll do another one. You got to think of one more. I'll do another one. Brothers are lying, sadistic sons of bitches. I don't know anything about that, but I'm just saying if you have a
Right.
brother, I'm sure you would.
Oh, yeah. I do, but I like him.
Okay. All right. One more, Sherry.
Okay, let's see. What other family members? Grandmothers
Okay. Grandmothers.
are diabetic people?
Just no. Our cats are diabetic people, Sherry. That's
I don't
that's the
know.
problem, quite frankly. You really could have called grandmothers or grandfathers nest eggs.
Nest eggs. Oh shit. Terrible.
You know what? On that note, I think it might be time for us to answer some viewer mail. Show and viewer mail, same handful of audience. I don't even know why I keep doing this. They're the only people, same ones each week. You're just gonna have to go back and watch it in slow mo. And finally, do you love how the music is just different enough that we don't get sued?
It's a good little
Yeah.
piece. Yeah. Very reminiscent of John Williams.
I tell you what, because it would be Disney now who would be suing us, and
Yeah.
I don't think they will though, because if Disney had been watching this show, I think we would have been sued by now.
We would have been drone bombed by now.
All right. Andrew Avery writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, is it ironic that federal unemployment bonuses also don't work? Now, Andrew, I won't be having any of that. I'll have you know that if I qualify for any of that free money from the government, I'm going to take it. Because if I don't, they'll just give it to someone else. But I take it. See, this is what you do. If you're going to get another stimulus check, you take the stimulus check. And a lot of people went and put it in crypto, but don't go just put it in Bitcoin. Go find you're looking for the next Bitcoin. So go find something like Doge or SafeMoon, and you put all your money into SafeMoon, and then when that explodes and you become a millionaire, you go to patreon.com/AlanMosley, you type in 999,999.99, and you hit enter, and then we will see you in Puerto Rico.
Sounds good to me.
Did you know that Puerto Rico has a lot looser tax laws than the mainland U.S.,
Correct.
most of the states. But Puerto Rico, I'm under the understanding, they don't charge like those special capital gains on crypto.
Oh,
Puerto Rico doesn't.
okay.
So if you have become a crypto whale, you need to go to Puerto Rico so that you can cash out, and then All right. Rachel Watson Kennerly writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, if Alan posts to Facebook in the forest, does it still get shadow banned? I tell you what, as a matter of fact, it does. So So we have actually gotten to nowadays, we only get questions for the viewer mail segment from our private group. Which, by the way, if you want to become a member of the private group, you have to ask to join. If you go to the Alan Mosley page and you go to groups, you'll see the It's Too Late community page, and you can click to join that. And I shall consider it.
You're benevolently considering it.
But we only get our viewer mail from the private group, because on the main page, I post the viewer mail post, and then I post it in the private group. And the private group, I mean, whatever's 50, 100 people in there, and, maybe about a third of the group will say, hey, it's the viewer mail post. On the main page, it'll
Right.
literally, which by the way, the main page is a group of like several thousand people,
Right.
whereas the private group is like 100 people. And yet on the main page, it'll literally get a reach of like 18.
Right. Yeah.
And it'll get like 3 times that in the private group where the pool is only like 100 people.
Yes.
Yes. So to answer Rachel's question, yes, it will still be Shadowban. Jonathan Carranza writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, Family Guy or South Park? Ooh, I know. That's
a
that
tough
is
one.
That is a good question, but
Yeah.
I do have a firm answer, but that's not to say that I'm it's a firm answer because I think the other one sucks. It's that I do genuinely have it. So I would genuinely say it's got to be South Park. I think South Park has always pushed the envelope further. I think both shows have been on TV way too long, and they're both now only shells of their former selves.
Sure.
But I think South Park had a longer run, an edgier run, and if you have that sadistic sense of humor that I do, a more entertaining run. I did like Family Guy from like seasons 1 through like 12.
Yeah.
But Family Guy's up to something like season 18 or 19
Really?
now. It is. I know. And that's even with it having been like canceled before, remember? And then it came back.
Right. Yeah.
Which, of course, South Park is actually, I think, is a few seasons above that because it was around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, it was around longer. I think quite a while longer.
Yeah. So I would say that South Park edges out Family Guy for those reasons. But if you're gonna give the nod to a show for being around longer and being edgier for its time, then The Simpsons are the OG.
Yeah.
But all of those shows have been on for 20 years too long. Yeah.
Exactly.
I will never forgive The Simpsons because not only did they just go leftist SJW, but then they started deleting characters like Apu.
Yes. Yeah.
So
we'll get famous on it and then we'll delete it. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could do a good Apu voice, but I can actually do a better Indian voice. But Apu sounds kind of Indian, but what he really sounds like is Apu.
Yeah.
That's what he really sounds like. He sounds like Apu. Tom Mullen writes, so you know what? Thank you, Tom, for bringing a little class to the viewer mail. So he's actually proving our little video incorrect. We actually have a new person asking a question. Tom Mullen writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, what is the capital of Assyria?
What's Assyria?
What's Aleppo? Well, I mean, if you're gonna go by like the original capital or maybe like the religious capital, I guess that's Ashur would be the capital of Assyria. But later in the show, we're going to talk a little bit about property rights and how you don't really own anything that you can't defend and refuse to be removed from, taxed over, all that good stuff. So, I mean, by that logic, I guess Assyria's capital of Assyria is Washington, D.C.
Correct.
Correct. Really, the capital of everywhere is Washington, D.C., unless proven otherwise.
Or Jerusalem.
Yeah. Well, the capital of the United States is actually Jerusalem,
right.
But the capital of Assyria is Washington, D.C. That's right. So Eric Eli writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, I got a notification when Alan posted something. I'm betting it was this post. But when I looked to see it, it wasn't there. I clicked the notification, but it said there was no post. So if it's not too late, my question to Alan and Sherry, do you think Facebook antics were behind this, and why would Facebook do it? I mean, this is just sort of kind of like a weekly routine for us, I guess, at this point. Yeah.
I think the viewers have not been dealing with this kind of shadow banning for as long as we have. So it's a little shocking to them, but to us, it's just like, here we go, got a reach of 2 again.
Well, yeah, because there's all those people out there. And look, I sympathize with people who like build a page or some big audience on whatever platform, and then they get deplatformed. And it's like, well, I spent all that time and money growing that audience for nothing. It does suck. That doesn't happen to us because no one sees anything we say or do. So there you go. So were Facebook antics behind it? Of course.
Right.
Adam Sokozin writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, where do you stand on organic farming versus conventional methods? This really goes to show how out of touch I am, because I thought conventional methods were organic farming.
Yes, in a way, yes, but no.
Like I know that what Adam's probably talking about is what do you think about these like giant mills?
Yes.
Where like, you see the raggedy little chicken, and they're just pushing them in the meat.
Misery.
Yeah. And the chemicals and the steroids and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm not saying, like, I guess I'm not as passionate about it as perhaps I should be. I know that someone in the audience right now is like, well, they're sending me their 2-mile long message in the Premiere chat of why I'm an asshole. But I guess this is one of those things where this is kind of like social media and Twitter, where when people on Twitter say birthing person, that's not real life.
Right.
Most people in America are not sitting around debating the finer points of birthing people. So those same mega farms that are doing those practices, it might be a lot of what's out there because they produce a lot of goods, but in terms of farmers and farms, that's not most farms.
Right.
Like, I have personally never been to a farm or met a farmer who operates that way.
Right.
Yeah. So, buy local? Yeah. I don't know. I'm looking for a bumper sticker slogan to help Adam out here.
I think organic farming is great, but, not because the government says organic farms, because it's kind of a racket, the whole government licensing or approval of organic farms. But yeah, I mean, organic farming is great, but I also think that a lot of the pesticides have done a lot of good too. So,
I just need whatever type of farming it takes so that I can go at any time of day to like any fast food restaurant and eat whatever I want for like $3. Whatever type of farming makes that possible.
That's child labor farming.
I gotta eat, Sherry. I'm dying of keto diabetic yeah, you know.
I know.
And finally, Marilyn Wilimowski, Liberty Late Night, writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, do you have game apps on your phone? And if yes, which ones? Sherry, do you have any game apps on your phone?
Yes.
You do?
I do. I have Boggle. I love Boggle.
Right now, our younger audience are like, what the hell is that?
It's old people games.
I mean, back in my day, you took birds and you threw them at pigs.
Yeah.
Because that was supposed to be funny.
I love throwing things at pigs.
Yeah.
I need to get that game.
But I actually don't have any game apps on my phone. I used to have Words with Friends.
Yeah. Oh, I like that one.
I used to have Words with Friends. This was years ago. Me and Enneke used to play Words with Friends, and we don't anymore because I want us to maintain a relationship.
Right.
So, guys, we're going to be back after this segment to talk about an awesome article from Jim Bovard about dollars for collars right after this break. Don't go away. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for It's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Email us at info@alanmosley.tv. Guys, welcome back to the show. Our first segment tonight is going to be talking about dollars for collars. This is actually an article by our friend and multiple-time guest on the show, Jim Bovard. He's writing for the American Conservative. Biden plans expansion of Fed's army of snitches in Dollars for Collars program. How the administration plans on expanding its already massive surveillance apparatus. I love that little Bill of Rights there with the stamp. Void where prohibited by law.
That's great.
You hate to see it.
Yeah.
So anyway, The Biden administration may soon recruit an army of private snoops to conduct surveillance that would be illegal if done by federal agents. As part of its war on extremism, boy, that January 6th just keeps paying off, doesn't it? The Department of Homeland Security may exploit a legal workaround, in quotation marks, to spy on and potentially entrap Americans who are, quote, perpetuating the narratives of concern. I'm just gonna. I hadn't even made it through the first full sentence. I'm gonna stop right there. What the hell does that mean?
What it means is anything we don't like,
yes,
is of concern, and therefore you're a terrorist.
But federal informant programs routinely degenerate into, quote, dollars for collar schemes that reward scoundrels for fabricating crimes that destroy the lives of innocent Americans. Couldn't imagine that ever taking place. Yeah. The DHS plan would, quote, allow the department to circumvent constitutional and legal limits on surveillance of private citizens and groups. Federal agencies are prohibited from targeting individuals solely for First Amendment protected speech and activities. But federal hirelings would be under no such restraint. Private informants could create false identities that would be problematic if done by federal agents. So take a quick pause right there. This sounds so much like what we've talked about very recently about big tech. You think of your Facebooks and your Twitters and your YouTubes and the big platforms that frankly are opinion molders because they are not just artificially promoting speech they like and artificially demoting, if not just completely removing speech they don't like. But they're really kind of taking their marching orders from the state. So the state says, look, we'll scratch your back, but maybe there'll be a little subsidy here. Maybe there'll be a little protections. Should you need some protection from some sort of antitrust or monopolistic concerns, we'll have your back. But in exchange, since we can't just scratch the First Amendment out of the Bill of Rights, we need you guys to do it for us. And so what Michael Rectenwald would say is that makes them governmentalities. Right. They're really just bureaus of the government apparatus. They're part of Leviathan. And so since they are, they neither deserve your respect or sympathy as being private companies that are allowed to do what they want. That's absolutely not true. So it sounds very much like that, but on an individual informant level. So moving on, DHS will be ramping up a war against an enemy which the feds have never clearly or competently defined. Boy, that's never happened before.
Nah.
I'm sorry. It has that whole big tech thing, and it has like the war on terror thing, and the endless authorization for war. It's just all just mashed together.
Or FISA courts, we can't get it this way, so let's make our own new laws around it.
Yeah. What kind of persons would they be? They're not birthing persons. They're what would we call those type? They're just
holing persons.
I mean, I would just call them Soviet persons, quite frankly.
Terrible persons.
Terrible persons. You're a terrible persons. According to a March report by Biden's Office of the Director of National Intelligence, domestic violent extremists include individuals who, quote, take overt steps to violently resist or facilitate the overthrow of the U.S. government in support of their belief that the U.S. government is purposely exceeding its constitutional authority.
Wow.
So this is the last show of It's Too Late.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. Goodbye.
We'll see you from the FEMA camp.
Bovard says, perhaps like setting up a private informant scheme to evade constitutional restrictions on warrantless surveillance, perhaps?
One
DHS official bewailed to CNN, quote, domestic violent extremists are really adaptive and innovative. We see them not only moving to encrypted platforms, but obviously couching their language so they don't trigger any kind of red flag on any platforms. Frankly, I got to figure out how to do that myself if you've seen our reach numbers.
Right.
I got to figure out how to couch my language so I don't trigger any kind of red flag on any platform. Those damn redneck violent extremists obviously know more than I do. DHS officials have apparently decided that certain groups of people are guilty regardless of what they say. The targets are likely to be simply people with a bad attitude towards Washington. To be fair, I'm not one of these total morons who's like, well, everyone's really a libertarian. They just don't know it.
Right.
That's not true. But I actually know a lot of people across a lot of ideological barriers that have bad attitudes towards Washington.
Yeah.
This is basically the public.
Yeah. Anybody they want.
That will include gun owners who distrust politicians who vow to seize guns. Well, it reminds me of there's a quote by Michael Malice where he says, sometimes it's helpful to just take people at their word. And so when you see people like Joe Biden going up there on the steps of the Capitol and saying things like, no one needs that. You don't need that rifle. You don't need that ammo. You don't need that magazine with that many rounds. I'm going to take him at his word. And he sounds like a gun grabber.
Right.
And so for me to then have a negative opinion towards Washington because I think they're going to seize my guns, this isn't me. So because that's the thing about the word extremist, right? It's not just extremist in the sense of they're willing to take drastic measures.
Right.
It also combines like the conspiracy part of it is you're a nut job. If you're an extremist, you're not just someone on the far end. You're a nut job. And nut jobs are, we don't know what they're going to do. They're unpredictable. They're dangerous. But it's not an extreme position to think that they could come for your civil liberties because they tell you to your face. CNN says breaking news, and then they have a speech, and they're telling you to your face, we're going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you're a crazy nut job for believing them.
So I don't want to read through Bovard's entire article because you really should just go and check it out for yourself.
Mr. B is awesome.
He really is. So I'm going to skip down a little bit. Any new informants hired by the Biden administration will operate under the same perverse incentives that have long subverted due process. Informants tend to be rewarded based on how much assets they help government seize or how many people they help prosecutors condemn. So they're incentivized to get things taken, seized, and to get people put in jail.
Right.
I can't imagine how that might backfire into innocent people being hurt.
Right.
As a
forfeiture.
As a 2019 report by the American Bar Association noted, the government pays cash for incriminating information and testimony. This is troubling because the financial incentive to make cases against others may be much greater than the personal integrity of the informants. Integrity. A report by the Justice Department Office of Inspector General slammed the Drug Enforcement Agency for failing to, quote, document the reliability of informants who helped the DEA to confiscate billions of dollars of private property. The DEA paid informants $237 million between 2010 and 2015, including $25 million shoveled out to only 9 informants. The DEA's, this is a guy, there's actually a funny little movie and articles about this guy. Have you ever heard of the name Andrew Chambers Jr.?
No, I don't recall hearing it.
Listen to this. The DEA's best paid informant, Andrew Chambers Jr., was found to have given, quote, false testimony under oath in at least 16 criminal prosecutions nationwide before he was exposed in the late 1990s. And that was reported in 2013. Attorney General Janet Reno banned the DEA from using him as an informant. But in 2008, the DEA rehired Chambers and used him for at least the following 5 years. So this is what's amazing about the story of Andrew Chambers Jr. So first of all, Janet Reno is just like the biggest swamp monster there ever was. And yet even she says, maybe that might be a bit much, Mr. Chambers.
Right.
Maybe, okay, when you lied under oath 15 times, we were willing to let it slide. But when you lied under oath the 16th time, So even Janet Reno says, you've crossed the line and you can't be a part of our operations. But years later, they rehire him and he had worked for 5 years since that time. Jeez. By the way, just another interesting thing to point out about that. What happens to you or me if we lie under oath?
Oh my gosh. I mean, they will literally crucify us.
And yet this guy lied under oath to help prosecute people on 16 different occasions that we can confirm. And yet not only was he not, he was just let go by the department. That was his punishment. But then he was rehired anyway. So I guess all is well that ends well.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So one purpose of relying on private informants is to assure that there are no federal fingerprints when people are coaxed or shoved into breaking the law. The FBI admits that it formally entitles its army of informants to commit more than 5,000 crimes a year. So they break the law knowingly and purposefully, and that's okay for them to do. Right. There is no estimate of how many crimes are committed directly by FBI agents who have been formally taught that the FBI has the ability to bend or suspend the law to impinge on the freedom of others. Thanks to the FBI's Iron Curtain of secrecy, we have no idea what sort of atrocities its informants may now be committing. During George W. Bush's reign, God, don't you just miss W?
I missed the days.
The White House formally invoked executive privilege to block disclosure of the FBI's sweetheart deals for Whitey Bulger, a notorious FBI informant and Irish crime boss linked to 20 murders. The FBI knew of Bulger's role in the killings, but lied in court to protect him. Sherry, what happens to you or me if we lie under oath? Oh, I'm sorry. We already.
We're dead.
We already did that. They even provided false testimony to send innocent men to prison for life to safeguard Bulger. That debacle was summarized in a 2004 congressional report titled "Everything Secret Degenerates: The FBI's Use of Murderers as Informants." In 2011, a federal judge aptly labeled the FBI's behavior in the case as uncontrolled official wickedness.
Wow.
Yeah, yikes. So we're gonna scroll down here a little bit. DHS, Department of Homeland Security, wants to enlist more private informants at the same time federal undercover operations are already out of control. At least 40 separate federal agencies are now conducting undercover operations involving thousands of agents. By the way, that's what they have now. That's not including this proposed program. 40 different federal agencies are conducting undercover. How many? I know of, like Homeland, FBI, CIA.
ICE.
There's like 36 more agencies that have their own army of agents and informants to spy on you.
The post office and the public education system.
Hold on to that, Sherry. We're about to hit that again. So at least 40 agencies. An undercover DA agent, quote, created a fake Facebook page from the photos of a young woman in Watertown, New York, without her knowledge to lure drug suspects. IRS agents are officially permitted to, quote, pose as an attorney, physician, clergyman, or member of the news media in order to get you to talk. The Times noted in 2014 that the military and its investigative agencies have almost as many undercover agents working inside the U.S. as does the FBI. That's the war on terror come home right there.
Yeah.
Often serving on joint federal task forces of the type that would likely be expanded for the Biden extremist crackdown. A sting operation by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency. Oh, we forgot them. ATF.
Oh, poor ATF. Yeah. Always left out.
Swayed mentally handicapped individuals to get tattoos to help advertise its bogus gun stores, violating federal laws protecting the disabled. Oversight is often a mirage. An ATF committee created to oversee undercover operations didn't bother meeting for more than half a decade. So that's an interesting point. A lot of times when something happens in the news, there's police brutality. There's some sort of public outcry because some abuse has come to light. People will be cowed into believing that something is being done when their representatives go to Washington and say, well, we'll form this committee. We'll put together this oversight commission.
Right.
Well, they did that for the ATF, and then that commission didn't bother to meet for more than half a decade.
Right.
The Times noted, even Justice Department officials say they are uncertain how many agents work undercover. That's the beauty of the state, is that if you ask the government, how many agents do you have under the cover? Their honest answer is, I have no idea.
Right.
They don't know. The Biden administration is considering unleashing a new surveillance program at a time when Americans have no idea how many federal agents are already spying on them. Yahoo News disclosed last month that the Postal Inspection Service is running ICOP.
Right.
The Internet Covert Operations Program, to sweep social media and other websites, searching for any, quote, inflammatory postings on topics including protests against COVID lockdowns. Postal inspectors got access to private messages on Parler and Telegram, presumably with no search warrant. The ICOP program turns over its discoveries to other federal agencies. Rachel Levinson Waldman of the Brennan Center for Justice commented that ICOP, quote, seems a little bizarre. Since the surveillance included, quote, monitoring of social media that's unrelated to the use of the postal system. Thomas Massey of Kentucky denounced the program for violating the Constitution and asked, The U.S. Postal Service has been losing money for many years. So where do they find the money to run the surveillance program? Unfortunately, federal agencies that trample the law and the Constitution in their surveillance efforts are usually punished with budget increases.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to wrap up really quickly here. That we've already talked about how that just reeks of, because there's so many overtones in just Jim's article there. You think of the war on terror. You think of the Patriot Act.
Mm-hmm.
You think of big tech and governmentalities and how they sort of the state sort of farms out the suppression of dissent and free speech to them. It has all of those same likings. It has all the it's the same MO, right? It's the same playbook of, well, we could probably get away with doing. I mean, look, most people in government aren't particularly concerned about whether or not they can get away with something. They just do it, and then they'll let the courts figure it out years later, if ever. It always reminds me of who's that one loser from the Northeast? I always forget his name. The commie Democrat that ran for office for a while, but back before the Bernie days. But anyway, he had the famous quote of, when asked, "Aren't you concerned about the constitutionality of the things you're voting on?" His answer was, "Well, that's not my job. We let the courts decide."
Wow. Yeah.
Not my job. It's easy to see how when you have a state apparatus where everyone's attitude is, "That's not my job. I'll kick that can down the road."
Right.
And then you have oversight committees who then basically, they have offices, they have budgets, but you don't ever actually see them do anything. They don't even have meetings for years at a time.
Yeah.
It's easy to see how you wind up in this situation.
Right. And then the courts that they so look to let them decide are in their pocket too, because they run the courts. So of course
we've investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing. It's just the same old story. Guys, we're going to be right back with one more article talking about how you don't really own something if you can be taxed and can't defend it. Right after this break. Guys, welcome back to the show. Our last segment today is talking about, we actually have the story and then we have the update. So this actually comes to us from Fee. It was originally written by Carrie Wedler. City fines elderly man $30,000 over uncut grass, then tries to steal his home. Individuals should not have to engage in lengthy legal battles to avoid excessive fines and enjoy the liberty to peacefully do as they wish on their own property. So this gets back to what I was talking about a little bit ago when I was inferring is it really your property if you get taxed on it all the time? Is it really your property if you can be told what to do with it, how to maintain it? And then ultimately, if you resist, is it your property if they tell you no longer can live there? It belongs to us now. Doesn't sound like it's your property at all.
Not really.
So this is a story right here. So he is, by the way, the gentleman in the story. He was fined $30,000. He's a 69-year-old retiree, fined $30,000, and now they're foreclosing on his home because he's unable to pay. The city of Dunedin claims that its code enforcement board, which is run by citizens but backed by government authority. Does that not sound like what we just did in the last segment?
Exactly.
Jesus, man.
Yep.
Fined homeowner Jim Ficken $500 per day over code violations, an increased fine because he's a repeat offender. So this is the story of, well, how did we get here? In 2015, Ficken committed his first offense when he left town to take care of a dying mother in South Carolina and left his grass unattended.
How evil.
Yes. He committed a second violation the following summer when he had to manage her estate and settle her affairs after her passing. This time, the grass was left uncut because the man who Ficken had hired to cut the grass died. So he hired a service to cut the grass, and then the guy who ran that service passed away. Then the report says Ficken's lawnmower broke, and he left the grass on his front lawn continue to grow. The board claimed that they received complaints about the height of his grass. Oh, there's your liberty-loving neighbors right there. So it grew past the 10-inch limit in the summer, but although his attorneys say they see no evidence of the complaints. So to scroll down, so ultimately Ficken did eventually cut his grass upon returning home and having the means to do so. But by the time he did, his bill was up to $29,833.50. So representatives of the city of Dunedin actually came by Ficken's property to let him know, quote, "You've got a big bill coming. I hope you can pay it."
Jeez.
Bastards. Wow. So last week, and this would have been in 2019, they moved to foreclose Ficken's home over his inability to pay the exorbitant fees. In return, he filed a lawsuit. By the way, in that lawsuit, he's only seeking $1 in nominal damages and attorney's fees and injunctions that would relieve him of the fines. He's not looking to get rich. He just wants it. He wants to be allowed to live his life. Unfortunately, this is back in the news because we have an update. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Federal court rules against Florida man fined $30,000 over tall grass. Federal judge on Monday upheld the $30,000 in fine against a Florida retiree who failed to cut his grass. Scrolling down, Ficken said he had no idea he was racking up the fines until he returned home from South Carolina. And they talk about the city inspector. Ficken was represented by the Institute for Justice, who argued the fines imposed against Ficken were not valid because they were excessive and the city did not notify Ficken. The Constitution protects against fines that are excessive or, quote, grossly disproportional to an offense, IJ attorney Andrew Ward says. The district court rejected those claims. Officials at the Institute for Justice described the decision as outrageous and a blow to property rights. If $30,000 for tall grass in Florida is not excessive, it's hard to imagine what is. Yesterday's ruling is wrong on the law, and we will be appealing. This ruling emboldens code enforcement departments across the state to impose crippling financial penalties, and it empowers them to do so without first notifying a property owner that they are potentially going to be fined. So that actually reminded me. There was this great talk by Jeff Deist, the president of the Mises Institute, and this was several years ago. Jeff looked a lot younger back then, so I think he was actually very recently become the president of the Mises Institute. I think Lou Rockwell had just recently stepped aside, and Jeff had taken that position. And he had a talk where he was actually, at the time, he was talking about police militarization, and specifically he was talking about the concept of the peace officer,
right,
and versus the modern conception of the law enforcement officer. And a little bit of tongue-in-cheek of you might talk to younger folks who they've never really even heard the phrase peace officer. Like, that's a foreign concept to someone under a certain age. And he got to talking a little bit. He made the analogy of the old Andy Griffith show, talking about Sheriff Andy Taylor.
Yeah.
And you think of all those old black and white Andy Griffiths and Sheriff Andy Taylor and his deputy Barney Fife and Mayberry, and how this was kind of the embodiment of the peace officer, right? He was not looking to escalate things. He was looking to problem solve. He was not looking to just apply the letter of the law because he could.
Right.
If anything, he was looking for ways to avoid having to do that by finding common sense solutions that would help the people there.
Right.
And because at the end of the day, helping the people there in his community was what he was more interested in doing that than he was enforcing the law, because he considered himself a member of that community. He was a part of Mayberry, and vice versa. The people of Mayberry are that much more likely to respect and trust him should something horrible actually indeed happen. And Jeff actually, he had a specific episode in mind where he talked about, there was this episode where there was this curmudgeon old man down the street who had gotten into some sort of dispute with his neighbors, and he had locked himself up in his house. And so Andy goes out there with Barney, And when they get there, this guy starts shooting at him with his rifle from the second floor. And of course, Barney being Barney, you know, he dives behind the squad car and he's loading his one bullet into his revolver. But while he's doing that, Andy is making his way up to the front door. And what ends up happening is Andy goes inside, and after a few moments, he walks out the front door with the old man. And the point being was he ended up just talking him down. Whatever had gotten him so excited to the point of firing at the sheriff, he had talked him out of it. And at the end of the episode, there wasn't even an arrest.
Right.
Now, for one, that's absolutely alien to modern law enforcement, right? Like, can you imagine there being any instance where people fired upon police and then they talk it out and then that guy goes home that night?
Right.
That just
not in a body bag.
Yeah, I mean the real, not the metaphorical home, like
right.
to Jesus. I mean the real home. But it kind of comes full circle to this, that the circumstances involved with Mr. Ficken, him taking care of his mother. We're not even getting into the property. We'll get to the property rights here in a second. But just the circumstances that led to this confrontation with the city,
right.
None of those matter to those people.
Nope.
Because they know that if they stick to their guns and they're able to apply the letter of the law as they see it, then they're gonna make some bank. They're gonna get a property. They're gonna mortgage that bad boy off, and they're gonna fill the city coffers with a little bit of cash.
Buy a margarita machine.
It's such a short-sighted thing for them to do, because they're so much more concerned with sticking it to this old man and stealing his property and funding one budget or another, that they don't see that the long-term damage is that you're alienating a whole community of people. That now you code enforcement folks, you city of Dunedin, you are no longer a part of the community. You have now created the us versus them mentality in that city.
Yep.
And just in the same way that modern law enforcement, and this isn't us doing it, they do that.
Right.
Law enforcement themselves say it's us versus them and we're going to war every day on the streets. That's their language.
Yeah.
That's their language, not ours.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to put a bow on that is that, of course, we believe in property rights. That we believe, I mean, that's kind of a core tenet of everything we believe in. It's all rights are property rights. You own yourself, you own your property, you have a higher claim to that than anyone else. And of course, the perverse incentive here, you know, going back to the Andy Griffith analogy, is that if crime were spiking ever higher in Mayberry and he couldn't get it under control, Sheriff Andy wouldn't see that as an opportunity for a bigger appropriation from the budget.
Right.
He wouldn't see that as an opportunity to get more military gear. They wouldn't be bringing an MRAP into Mayberry. They wouldn't be paying more overtime and hiring more. They wouldn't be hiring a team of informants. He would see that as a personal failure.
Yes.
Because his goal was to have the opposite of that. And if it didn't work out, he would consider it a failure. But in modern law enforcement, or whether it be code violations or anything else, having to do more enforcing, having more infractions in this case, or having more crime, which then leads to bigger budgets for increased what we talked about a week or two ago, having some more joint federal task forces to crack down on more things. They want those things because that lines their pockets. And what a perverse incentive that must be.
Yeah. It's wicked.
We almost made it through the show without getting to cops.
My blood's boiling. You realize that?
Guys, we're going to be right back to finish up the show and get Sherry's final thought right after this. Don't go away. Hi guys, it's Alan here, and I want to take a moment to let you know about one of our supporters who started a new business. Laura Moreau sells 50 different health and wellness all-natural products, from weight loss, supplements, energy enhancers, body toning, longer and stronger hair, and so much more. Do you like coffee? Well, they even have coffee that'll help you drop some pounds. And who doesn't want to drop a few pounds? Go check her out at our online store at lauramoreau.itworks.com today. That's lauramoreau.itworks.com. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/AlanMosleyTV. You can follow me on Twitter. That's twitter.com/AlanMosleyTV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/AlanMosleyTV. Guys, also don't forget we're now on Odyssey. You go to odyssey.com, search It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. Don't just complain about big tech platforms like YouTube silencing free speech. Go and do something about it. We're a monetized channel over there, so your views help fund the show. So go to odyssey.com. Also, if you're more of a listener than a watcher, you can listen to your favorite podcasting platform of choice thanks to Anchor FM. So they've got us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, all those different things out there. You know.
All the things.
For the bingers out there, you give us those listens. We're also monetized there as well. So that's Anchor FM. Just It's Too Late with Alan Mosley, Alan Mosley TV. Sherry, do you have a final thought?
Just nothing that the government does is for your benefit unless it's actually for their benefit. So never believe them.
Yeah, exactly. Government is... I feel like if anybody takes anything away from this show, it's that government's bad.
That'd be the best thing they could take away.
The state is not good.
Correct.
Now I sound like some of those empty platitude celebritarian types on Twitter that get thousands of upvotes for their...
Taxation is theft.
Guys, did you know that taxation's not cool? Jesus Christ. I'm not gonna name any names. That's for our final show. When we decide that the series is over, that's what that episode's gonna be. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week.